So welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So welcome to the next edition of Conversations with Capita, where we decode all matters related to equity. So today we have both, I would say, a special guest and a special topic to talk about. Recently, I think as recent as the last week, MCA, which is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, came up with some more amendments to the rules under the Companies Act of 2013. And we see that there are some immediate implications to companies in general, and within that, I would say private companies in particular, which is where most of the startups are incorporated as private companies. So to decode this, we have Jigar with us, Jigar Shah. So Jigar is the founder and partner at JMJA and Associates. It's a leading company secretary firm based out of Mumbai. They serve hundreds of companies. And Jigar is also someone I avidly follow on Twitter, and he shares a lot of relevant content on matters of company law and relevant to a lot of company secretaries. So do check out his Twitter handle as well. And welcome, Jigar. Good to have you on LinkedIn this time. Yeah.
Thank you, Shrikant.
Great. So, Jigar, with that introduction, so welcome to this conversation. There are a bunch of aspects we wanted to kind of decode, and there are a few amendments that were kind of announced last week. In this conversation, Jigar, I would like you to wear the lens of a startup, right? Because at Capita we work with thousands of startups in managing their equity and ownership matters. So with that lens, what are the implications is something we would like to decode, right?
Yes.
So what I'll do is maybe I'll bring up each of the amendment one by one, and then we can discuss aspects around the amendment. What are the implications, timelines, immediate next steps that you would recommend for startups and relevant companies, etc. Right? Does that sound good?
Yes.
Awesome. So Jigar, the first thing, the most important amendment that came across here was the perhaps having a lot of far-reaching consequences in the way companies manage ownership is with regard to the dematerialization of private company shares, right? So let's start with that. Like, can you talk about who is it applicable for? What are the implications? Also give a sense of the timelines, that companies have with regard to this. So, over to you on this aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Shrikant. So, as you said, this notification came on 27th October. Now, generally what happens with the notification is that there are clear timeline that is given. In this case, there is some confusion about the timeline, but I'll cover it step by step. So basically, the notification is called as Companies Prospectus and Allotment Securities Second Amendment Rules 2023. So basically, it covers two aspects. One is the conversion of the warrants, and the second part is the demat of shares. Conversion of warrant is applicable for the old warrant which were issued prior to implementation of Companies Act 2013. So, like as on 1st April 2014, whatever warrants were outstanding in the public company, that needs to be converted into demat, and the timeline is given. So, I don't think so. It is very much relevant for a startup. So, we'll just skip that part. And the second part is for the demat of shares, which has made the maximum buzz, and rightly so as well, because now, as per this notification, all the private companies other than the small companies are required to have their securities in demat form. The timeline is given in the notification is 18 months from the closure of financial year of this year. So it's like technically we have just 11 months left now. So by 30th September 2024, unless the due dates are extended, I don't see the cases of extension of due dates now. So 30th September 2024 is the timeline by when all private companies, except for those who are exempted, are required to mandatorily have every securities in demat form. The important word here is the securities, because
Okay.
most of the time we link shares to the this notification, but the word is security. So, like say, if companies have issued multiple round of CCPS or CCDs, then even all those things will fall part of that mandatory demat requirement. So, in startups specifically, when we see that they have done say pre-series round, series A, series B, all securities are different. So then we will require multiple
Correct.
ISIN. It will not be just one ISIN applicable to all. So just to cover a bit on the demat side, for each mandatory demat, company will require to have ISIN number. So it's more like जैसे book में ISBN होता है, we have a ISIN number. So this is a unique number for each security. So if company has say equity shares, Series A CCPS, pre-series CCPS, OCRPS, CCDs, which of the securities they've issued, for each security they will need a separate ISIN.
Yes.
This is mandatory. There is slightest of confusion in terms of applicability of these rules. Like what happens if I have to issue securities today? Do I need to issue in the can I issue in the physical form, or it is mandatory to issue in a demat form? Because the law says that uh, after the implementation of notification, whenever company is required to issue any securities, it has to comply with the law. So now timeline is not clear in terms of from when it will be applicable, because notification is applicable immediately, then it gives 18 months of extension. But my experience and general industry practice says that it will be from the 30th till the 30th September 2024 we can issue shares in a physical. Post that it will be everything mandatorily in demat. Also, the circular makes it mandatory for all directors, promoters, shares to be in demat form. So other than directors, promoters,
Okay.
other investors can continue to have shares in physical, but directors and promoters should mandatorily have shares in demat form. The
Okay.
good thing
But
will with this, yeah,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So you can continue. You can
Yes, so the
continue.
good thing will with this notification is that it will streamline a lot of smaller issues that everyone is facing, because when shares are issued, people are not aware like actually shares a lot. Who can you are? You will see that there are so many. Even when you are handling the ESOP portfolio right now, many the employees are not aware when they've got the shares or not. So in Capita, they can see that okay, there is allotment done this software. But imagine after that, once you get the shares, you have physical shares and you don't have anywhere to verify it. Companies filing is done once in a year by 30th September. So by that time, people are not aware actually they have holding shares or not. So if today I've got allotted as shares, I can get confirmation of this thing on MCA by next year, September, October 2024, when the company filed MDT7 and I get my name as a list of shareholder. So with DMAT, all this thing will be streamlined. The side effect of this will be there will be a cost that will increase, because now some 15-20,000 per ISIN might be the cost. It depends on the RTA that they are going to appoint, and it depends on the CDSL or NSDL where the connectivity they are taking. So it will be a bit costlier for a company, but it will streamline a lot of aspects. And one of the things that government will be able to address is, now with this circular, the backdating will be very, very impossible. Like today,
Right.
though nobody says it officially, but then when we do the DD, we find out many times that okay, these things were not there. Now today they've created securities in backdated to arrange for certain thing. Now everything will be forward dating. So in a way, it is really a good step towards the corporate governance, because a year or 2 year down the line, when these things will implemented, everything will be streamlined. Everything will be in the demat form. ISIN is there. The separate authority is taking care of the securities. So lot of smaller frauds that used to happen, or I'll not even say fraud, but lot of little adjustment that used to happen, now that will stop. So everyone knows that okay, they have to follow the same path. So the weekly benpos will be received, the shareholding will be updated there, and transfer and transmission will become much easier, because now it's a systematic format which is used for listed company will be used here. The only companies which are exempted from this are small companies. So as per Companies Act, the definition of
Right.
small companies, as on March 31, 2023, those companies which have a paid up capital of less than 4 crores and turnover less than 40 crores are considered as a small companies. And as of now, they are exempted from this circular. Barring this, every private company will automatically fall under it. So you will see that many startups don't have actual revenue, or they are in a pre-revenue stage, raised good money, but it's on a premium, and the paid up capital is less than 4 crores, then they are exempted. But if the capital, paid up capital, which is going in the balance sheet is more than 4 crores, or the turnover has crossed 40 crores already, revenue side, then they will automatically fall under this circular.
Got
So,
it. I think,
yeah,
Jigar, a lot of things you packed in that response. So I think a little bit of let me reiterate it. So one is, I think this is maybe a positive step from a larger aspiration from being a more bringing more transparency, and also like you mentioned, it's also enables doing more transactions, enabling make it more seamless, just like in the listed the public markets space that we just discussed, right? And
Yes.
here one aspect you mentioned is the eligibility. So still the very early companies, and here the one question I have is, it's either or, right? So either they have 4 crores of paid up capital, or 40 crores. If they check any of these boxes, they will be eligible, or they are also mandated to have dematerialized securities, right? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes. Right.
Okay, okay. And just coming to so just summarizing, you also mentioned every security class. So in terms of the immediate implications for startups who fall under this category, one is, as per your interpretation, the timeline to adhere to this is September of next year, end of September, and basically by that time, for every security class that have been issued by the particular company, they will have to create an ISIN, and the securities will now need to be held by the demat accounts of those respective shareholders. Here also you made a qualification that investors, you said, might still hold it in physical form. Is that correct? But then I think any future transactions will have to be done in dematerialized form. Is that also
Yes.
the right interpretation?
Yes, so shares will be issued in a demat form, but investors can say that they want to hold in a physical form, because legally nobody can force you to have shares in a demat form only. So as an investor, you can always choose to rematerialize. This is the same stand even SEBI has taken for listed company. So say for example, if
Correct.
I buy the shares of a BSE listed company or NSE listed company and I want to get it converted to physical form, I can request for submit a remat request. Similar position
Right.
is the continued, but I believe investor will prefer more in a demat form, because today all the VCs and startup, now they can just have download the demat statement and they'll get all the holdings that they are having.
Yeah, perfect. That's what it makes it more centralized and more transparent. And in terms of the securities, you pretty much mentioned all the typical securities that are issued at the time of investment. So, which is okay, equity shares, any form of preference shares or CCPS, which are typically held by investors, and also come note CCDs or any form of debentures as well, which are again typically issued at the early stages. So all of them the implication is the company will have to create ISIN with the depositories, and then issue shares against those ISINs. That is the next step for a lot of these companies who are eligible. So again, there's eligibility, and most of the early stage companies who are still in their pre-revenue or early revenue will not qualify. But maybe, Jigar, here maybe we can also make a larger point here that perhaps this will also move the ecosystem in the direction of being more digital right from the beginning. So
Digital.
many investors might start insisting on a dematerialization, even if the companies are not eligible from that standpoint, right? So what is your take on that?
Anyways, this will be like bring more transparency. We have seen in the specifically the due diligence part that there are certain shares which are issued but form is not filed, certain database is not available, and because of that, DD gets delayed. Now, once the dematerialize is done, there is one set of audit or DDs already done by the depositories when you're applying for a demat of shares. So, as a
Correct.
say, if I am going into doing a DD, once I know that this shares are dematted and it's there, my work is say 80% done in terms of share capital built up. It becomes very easier. All the past transfer documents and everything, now I don't need to be worried because the shares are in demat. There are third parties already checked and verified, so it becomes easier in terms of DD for even startups and promoters of the company.
Got it.
Because today
So in
today
a
we
way,
have seen,
yeah,
today we have seen
yeah, go
in
ahead.
different cases जहाँ पे promoter ने share transfer कर दिया, they have paid the money, but say professionalist forgot to update the record, or maybe promoter forgot to inform the promoter professionals that ये update कर लेना है, shares are not updated, certificate is not issued, stamp duty is not paid. These are the kind of queries that we generally get lot when doing the DD. All these things are now streamlined.
Got it. So in a way, the depository becomes like the single source of truth for
Yes,
getting an understanding of all the securities, who owns what, and things like that. So it's
right.
much more streamlined. Great. I think that so again, request to all the ones who are tuning in right now is you can ask any questions using the chat option. So if there are any questions, I think this is the most important amendment that Jigar kind of alluded to. So if there are any questions on this, feel free to kind of ask your questions here. Uh, So I think, yeah, we kind of decoded all the aspects, the timelines associated, who is it relevant for, and also what could be the implications in general, with regard to the startup
Yeah.
ecosystem with regard to this amendment.
Just
Anything
I'll,
else to
I'll
add on
just
this? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'll just add
yeah.
two more things here. So once this shares gets dematted, there is a requirement to file PES 6 form every 6 months. So now that will be applicable even for these private companies. So every 6 months, those companies which are falling under this criteria will have to file one more form. So there will be a reporting that will be added. Just like the other annual filing, this will become a mandatory filing. You cannot ignore it. And the second thing is that the article of association, because most of the startups are having the standardized article of association, but the provisions of Demat are not there. So if this provision is not there, and since amendment in article generally falls under the reserve matter, it might take 2-3 months for the startup to update this AOA. So that will require. So basically, though we have 11 months, the way things are moving, it's better to start early and target set by March, update this thing and get the things house in order, so that we don't run behind everybody to get it cleared by the next September.
So
So
the
considering
specific steps you are saying is, the one is, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so considering this 11 months timeline they've given is a reasonable, but it's not like too much of time that everyone is having, because once you'll approach the authorities, they'll do their DD, NSDL or CDSL, they'll do their DD, then you'll require investors' approval to amend the AOA, update this thing, call the EGM, and then get the shares dematted, and then ask all promoters to open that individual demat account where the shares will get dematted. So this process will take easily 2-3 months, if not more.
Got it. So yeah, there are multiple steps. So first, I think first one is to kind of apply for an ISIN for all your securities, I'm assuming, right? Then,
Yes.
like you said, amending your AOA as well with regard to dematerialization of your shares. So just a practical question here, Jigar. What if one of the investors, because here you are also expecting all the shareholders to, have demat accounts, either furnish their demat account details, or in some cases they might also have to open demat account details, also
Yes.
based on the kind of shareholding, right? Whether it's an individual, an
Yes.
institution, or any other form of arrangement. So, what is your kind of take here? And then, what if a particular shareholder delays creating a demat account, etc.? What are the implications for the company? Yeah.
So it doesn't matter till the time that shareholder does not is not a director or a promoter group. So for other people, they can continue to hold shares in the physical form. There is no
Physical.
mandatory requirement. But for directors and promoters, if say for example the wife of a founder is not able to open a Demat account by 30th September, they will start defaulting here, because then they will not be able
Okay.
to file the form or issue the securities. And most of the time, as we have
Okay.
seen, startups are running to get the funding. By the time, imagine you got the funding, everything is ready. One of your promoter group has not shares in Demat, and that's why your legal DD will not allow you to issue shares. So then it will become
Right.
a very difficult situation.
Issue. Got it. And then there's an additional compliance that every 6 months you have to kind of disclose
File shareholding
what is the
basically.
form that needs shareholding? Yeah.
PS6. It's
Okay.
called as PS6.
F6.
So it's
Yeah.
applicable for a public companies right now. Now it will be applicable to private companies as well.
Got it. Got it. So that's an additional compliance which all the companies need to take
Yes.
hold of. It becomes just a formality in some sense, because I think hopefully the
Yeah,
records are
it's more of
becoming more
formality, but
digitized. Yeah.
yeah, it becomes the additional compliances. So that's one of the issue everyone is facing and interpreting the way things are moving, because on one hand we are reducing the compliances, and on the other hand the number of forms are increasing. So it's
Increasing.
a challenge, but yeah, that's how maybe we have seen the laws getting implemented. So it is what
Yeah,
it
I
is.
think there's that always an additional lens of caution, maybe. But I'm assuming if things are all getting digitized, perhaps the regulators also will have a real-time
Definitely.
view, perhaps. So at some point,
Yeah.
maybe these forms might not be really needed, but that's hopefully the future we'll go towards, in some sense.
Absolutely, because we don't
So great.
understand their point of view. So I believe
Correct.
they might have seen something, but maybe in future it will be
Correct.
reduced definitely.
Exactly. Exactly. Great. I think that was the first point. I think there are no additional questions, I guess, yet. Again, this was the most important amendment. So if there are any questions, again, even later, you can ask, and I think Jigar will definitely try to clarify. So maybe Jigar, next we can go to the another more important amendment that we saw, right? This is regarding to the share warrants, right? And especially in public companies and also the conversion to Demat form with regard to that instrument as well.
Yes.
So can you elaborate more on this? Who is it applicable for, and any timelines? Yeah.
Yeah, so again, conversion of warrant is applicable for all public companies. So prior to the implementation of Companies Act 2013, if there were any share warrant which is issued and which are still outstanding, then it is mandatory for those public companies to convert those warrants into Demat form. So they have to apply for ISIN within 3 months from the this notification is notified. So that is by 26 January 2024, they have to apply for ISIN, and the holders have to convert it within 6 months. So the timeline is like 26th April. So if anyone is holding any share warrant in any of the public company, they have to get it dematted by 26th April 2024. If not, the companies are asked to transfer those warrants into the IEPF account, Investor Education Protection Fund account. Because unfortunately, the share warrant is not reported in a similar manner to the share capital or anything. So there is no
Correct.
actual details available in any of the public platform that way. So again, this is just in order to streamline outstanding share warrants.
Okay. So basically, this is also mandating compulsory conversion to shares. Is that what you're saying as well?
Not compulsory converting
No.
into the shares, but compulsory into the demat form.
Demat. So warrants itself will become a class of security in some sense and need to be in the Demat format. Okay.
Yes.
So that it is also the reporting is getting streamlined. So it is not like a additional form of dilutive instruments which are just sitting outside of the
Yes.
scope of the reporting. So it is trying to streamline everything. And like you said, this is only applicable for public companies,
Public
not
companies.
so even startups and private companies having warrants. That's fine.
That's a different issue. They have not touched it as of now. They're just trying to cover up the one step at a time.
Okay, great. So I think that kind of clarifies. So if there are any questions from anyone who's tuned in, feel free to ask about this also. So moving on, Jigar, there's one more amendment regarding the disclosure of beneficial owners, right? So
Yes.
and there's a concept of designated person that a company needs to appoint, etc. So can you talk more about this?
Yes, sure. So broadly, there is two concepts which are in people use it interchangeably. One is called as beneficial owner. The other one is significant beneficial owner. Since the name are similar, people use it different interchangeably. So beneficial owner are the person who are say if I take an example of a private company. So in private company, when you want to form a 100% subsidiary, so one company will hold the entire shareholding, and the second person will just hold one share as a beneficial owner to the holding company. So that becomes a beneficial ownership. So at times in a companies act, companies we see that there are many shareholders who are registered as a shareholder in the company, but actual beneficial owner of that shares is someone else. So that requires a declaration. So the amendment says that company needs to designate one person who will be responsible for ensuring that this beneficial ownership declaration is received and properly recorded in the books of company. So that is the requirement. It is not any, it will not affect any day-to-day transaction like the demat of shares, but it is more like to find out somebody, designate somebody in the company to ensure that all beneficial owners reporting is being done in the Companies Act. Companies compliances is being taken, carried out in that way.
Got it. So basically, this is an additional provision to basically fix accountability with regard to this, especially in the areas where there are a lot of issues of laundering and fraud, or who's the ultimate stakeholder who's benefiting from this ownership kind of a thing. So you're basically holding someone accountable in the company.
In the
So
company.
practically, Jigar, what does it mean? Typically, is it the typically the company secretary or one of the directors who practically will become this role? What do you think? How
So
this will play out?
practically, the company secretary or one of the director will become the responsible for this thing. So the law, the notification is that company has to notify somebody, and in annual return, that name should be mentioned that Mr. ABC company secretary or Mr. ABC promoter will be the designated person for the all the beneficial owner declaration. So it's more like just
Okay.
finding, as you have perfectly summarized, it's more about finding someone accountable to ensure that this compliance is done. Because I believe government has found out few cases where someone is holding the shares on behalf of someone else. The name mentioned in the company is of a person who is actually not holding the beneficial ownership, When they asked company said that we don't know, we have never checked this thing. So now this rule fixes the accountability on somebody. So that's
Got
what.
it. And is this applicable? Like, what are the timelines for this? Do companies need to do this immediately, or is there
This is
some
immediate.
time for this?
So the law
This
says
is
that till the
immediate.
time company does not designate anybody, every director, KMP, company secretary, CFO, all of them are responsible. Once you designate one person, only this person will be responsible.
Oh, okay. So right now there's this deemed designated person, and they are all the group that you mentioned, right?
Yes.
And until then, all of them are basically accountable for this. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, this is also something to be made note of, and this is this applicable to both private companies and public companies, Jigar?
Every company. Every company.
Every company. So I think there's a much wider implication for this. So I hope all the listeners are taking note of this, and this is an immediate action that you all have to do as companies. So the last thing that I wanted to quickly touch upon, and we can come back to any of these earlier points as well, based on any questions that come in, is regard to amendments with respect to the limited liability, partnerships
Yes.
or LLPs. LLP entities. So again, there's always a kind of a difference between LLP and private limited companies. There's an ease. So many companies at early stages tend to open LLPs, etc. So what are these amendments with regard to LLP entities? You can start with that, and then we can look at some questions around it.
Yes. So again, LLP, there are two changes that has been brought in. One is the maintaining the register of the partners. So in company, we already maintain a lot of registers like register of directors, register of shareholders, and all. In LLP, the compliance were limited, but then with this amendment, they are asking each LLPs to maintain the register of partners, and they've given the format. So those who have handled the DD in the companies act knows that they have to maintain certain registers. A black book is maintained where the names of all directors and shareholders are mentioned. Similarly, the now register partner will be prepared. So that is one amendment, and the second amendment is the what we have discussed in the beneficial ownership in the company. It's replicated in the LLP as well. So even in LLP, we need one person who will be designated person for the beneficial ownership, and we have to just get it updated in the records of the LLP.
Got it. So one is this register of partners, and this needs to be maintained. Is like a statutory register, Jigar?
Yes,
Does
it's
it
a
need to be
statute.
filed as well?
No, it does not require to be filed, but it needs to be maintained internally.
Okay, okay. And the same amendment with regard to beneficial owner, there has to be someone designated, right? Uh,
Yes.
so any other thoughts, Jigar, on the LLP? Like, is the like government trying to bring it closer to the way private companies are being regulated, or what is your
Uh,
take on this here?
so there are a lot of challenges. Frankly speaking, I understand when it comes to regulating the LLP because company structure is very simple. You have the ownership, and then you have a different kinds of securities where you raise money, and say you have a CCPS, you have OCDs, you have debentures, basically to get the money, and there are different instruments. When it comes to LLP, it's more like a partnership firm which is run based on agreement. So
Correct.
but still, there are many people who are trying to issue debentures in the LLPs, and also structure-wise, LLP is more for smaller businesses or where you don't need to raise too much of capital, so then you can enjoy your advantage of limited liability versus company. So, but the way
Right.
things are moving on, maybe they are trying to bring a lot of clarity on this aspect and fixing the responsibilities there.
Got it. Yeah, that's, I think, well articulated. Great. I think there's one question from Bhavani. In which form should we file the beneficial owner to ROC? So, can you talk about that?
Okay. Again, the notification is silent when it comes to the first filing. The notification says that whenever there is any change, you need to file in GNL2. But the first person, when you designate, the notification is silent. So we generally are interpreting this in a way that we'll just pass a board resolution right now, designate somebody, and intimate them in the MGT7. So the notification timing right now is that currently all the companies are filing for their MGT7. So maybe in this year form, or maybe by next year it will be filed, or if there is any change, we need to file in GNL2.
Okay. Thanks, Jigar. I think that should answer Bhavani's question. Reach out to us if you have any follow-up question on that. So I think there are no remaining questions to be answered. So we'll maybe take a little bit of a time to see if there are more questions. Meanwhile, Jigar, it would be good. Did we cover all the points, Jigar? Are there any other amendments in the current scope of discussion with regard to the recent changes? Is
No,
there
I
something we
guess
didn't
we
cover?
have covered everything. What, because these are like basic amendments. The major one, which was the demat of shares, and we'll get to know more as and when we'll just try to implement it. But broadly, everything else, I guess we have covered.
Got it. And where do you think, what is it that typically you can expect a lot of founders listening to this, for them, company secretary itself is typically, a third party entity, right? So for them, what is the next step? Should they talk to their company secretaries, talk to them about these amendments, and they will guide them, or they should, like in this case, like for ISIN, you will have to set up something in the depositories, maybe with the RTAs. So would you want to talk about practically what does this mean for a founder, listening to this discussion?
Okay. So I believe you need, matlab, for founders, they just need to approach the company secretary or whoever the consultant they are talking to and initiate the process, and maybe keep a target of 31st March practically to get the shares in Demat. So by next financial year, they have everything in Demat. So if there is any issues they are going to face, it can be streamlined by the due date that is coming on September. Because one of the critical issues that this will block the issue of further securities, means it will block completely the fund flow, and for startup, like, that is the most important part in the early growth stage, because they are going to raise capital with very regular intervals. So having the shares in demand becomes very, very important.
Got it. Thanks. That is a useful advice, I think, to all the founders listening in. So there's one question again by Mansi, actually. For holding subsidiary, do we need a demat?
Yeah, so I believe Mansi's question is more from this perspective. Um in the definition of small company, I guess I missed out in saying that those which are holding in subsidiary company, they become the non-small company as per the definition. So even if the early stage startups, there are certain companies which has created a structure where they open a company, then they open a subsidiary company. In that case, they are not a small company, because the definition exclude
Okay.
the paid up capital and turnover criteria, plus the holding subsidiaries are excluded from the what you call is a definition of small company. So if even if early stage startup, no revenue, very basic capital, but they're holding subsidiary, they become the non-small company, and for them the demat rules will become applicable.
Oh, so is that in general, Jigar, or like even the parent company should be a large, non-small company, and
So
their holding subsidiaries are
the
eligible, or
current
how?
definition presumes that if you are a holding company or if you have a subsidiary company, you're not a small company, because you can afford to have,
Oh,
if
okay.
you are afford to run two companies simultaneously, you're not a small company.
Okay, that is very interesting. And does this apply to where the holding companies outside of India and the holding subsidiaries in India?
As of
Will it
now,
will
that part is again under the discussion, but we presume that if you're holding company outside India, still it's considered as holding company, and the law will applicable
it's
then.
so it's considered a non-small company, and
No.
so let's say all these typical companies where the holding company is outside India, be it in Singapore or US, Delaware,
Yes,
and there's a holding subsidiary, then to err on the side of caution, I would say you would still want to convert
100%.
into
Yes.
a demat format. Okay,
Yes.
okay.
So
Great. I think
we
this was
may
extremely
get into
yeah.
this maybe in future, or we may not get it, but as a practice, we prefer to include all of them in the non-small company and complete these compliances.
Got it. Got it. This is great. This is the last point also was extremely relevant, I think, for a lot of company structures that we see. Um,
Yes.
so so maybe Jigar, anything on the closing? I think there are no further questions that have been asked. Of course, if there are any other questions, we still have some time, so feel free to ask them. Jigar, if if you were to summarize the discussion, right? Maybe also maybe reflect the intention of these amendments and very quickly, anything to add to all that we discussed? Yeah,
Yeah, so summarize, I'll just say that there are a lot of changes that is happening. Maybe we are in the process, as we are seeing that the way India is growing, our regulations are growing too. So there are a lot of things that is going to be ups and down, and the challenging part will be to comply with the timeline. So and the way I have seen that law is evolving, the use of technology we have seen, so this thing will be difficult for next 1 or 2 years, but once things will streamline, it becomes very, very easier to operate in India. So in a way, it's a positive in the long run, challenging in the short run.
I think that's well put. Like many changes we have seen in the past as well. So there's one
Yeah.
last question from Bansi. I think that's a good question she pointed out. Like there are a lot of Section 8 companies which are like not-for-profit entities
Yeah.
under the Companies Act. So what are the implications for them?
Same. So
Would the
Section 8
same
companies
rules
again are
apply?
not same rules apply. So they are excluded from the exemption definition. So even they will be required to have the shares in Demat form.
Okay. I mean, will the rule of that 4 crore paid up capital and 40 crore revenue not apply to Section
Not
8 or
applicable.
by
Yes.
okay. So by default they will have to convert to Demat format.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Great, Jigar, thanks for a lot for kind of patiently addressing all the questions that came one by one. I think if there are more questions by anyone, so we at Capita also kind of manage equity, and we kind of take care of compliances either through the platform or through our services or through our partners like Jigar. So do reach out to us if you have any further questions on this matter, even after this live. So I think Jigar, thanks a lot for summarizing. I mean, first of all, detailing every aspect around the amendment. Who is it applicable for? When is it applicable from a timeline standpoint? Of course, there are a few things that might need clarification, which hopefully we'll get. And if there are any significant changes to these, we will of course do another conversation like this and clarify. Meanwhile, if there are changes that come do keep an eye on Capita handle, follow Jigger and JMJ law as well, and you'll get further information with any future changes as well. So on that note, I think we've come to an end of today's discussion. So Jigger, again, thanks a lot for being with us and also for the larger partnership we have with you, and we'll love to engage further as new developments kind of come in the future. So thanks, Jigger. Thanks a lot for spending time with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.